And I'm just going to let him talk about that, talk about, his experiences, what he's got going now, and just basically, hand the reins over to him.
I'm so unprepared.
It's okay. Does this show sound like we prepare? I spent 20 minutes looking for an extension cord before we recorded this freaking thing.
Now you're going to learn why I'm the devil's puppet.
Okay, now you keep saying stuff like that, so I am going to hand it over to you so you can explain, because you and I talked about it. We've gone to lunch like twice now, and the first time you and I went to lunch, you kind of made a comment like that, which made me go, huh? So, you and Peter were talking out in our mutual friend Peter. Rick is friends with a friend of mine that used to live next door to me. I ran into him, and he's like, oh, well, you do a comic podcast, and you're back in New York? Well, I got a friend named Rick who'd love to talk to you. Rick and I went to lunch with Peter, and they kept making references like this. So I finally went online and put your name in Google, and came across this weird-ass website.
Yeah, only that's not me. That's that other guy.
Oh, okay.
Wait, there's a
it's
website? What?
It's your exact twin. It's your mirror universe guy. He has a beard. You don't.
Oh, it's Bizarro Rick.
It's
Bizarro Rick.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
So go ahead, Rick. Give us, tell us about you, and tell us about that stuff if you want to.
Well, I've been a comic book reader and a collector pretty much since I was probably around the age 6, 7 years old. Went through a variety of ways as a youngster before I went into service in the early 70s to acquire comic books and enjoyed reading. And it was from that grew in the late 80s into an idea of trying to entice kids back then to read more and to read comic books, because I saw an area of the hobby that was dying off. And I prefer to think of it as a hobby versus a business or anything, although there is a business aspect of it and an aspect of that in my own life.
Well, I think, and forgive me for interrupting, and forgive me, everybody, because I'm in the middle of eating jelly beans left over from Easter.
They're really good jelly beans.
They are. I look at it like this. If you make your money off of comic books, it's a business. If you're spending money to buy comics and read them, then it's a hobby. It's
a hobby. And it has always been a hobby for me and for some individuals that, older individuals that came in, understood what I was trying to do, and then aligned with me to help these things carry through and become reality. And at any rate, the group I'm talking about is ORCA, Organized Readers of Comics Association.
Okay.
We've got a Facebook group page.
And while we're talking, I'm handing Dante a copy of the newspaper.
What you got there in your hand, Dante, is a copy of Splash, something that we did back, this dates back to 2000. That was actually put together at the Pittsburgh Comic-Con.
Oh, wow.
Live on site during the con. It wasn't initially my idea. I just helped support it and carry it through. It was done by people that were working with the club at that point in time. And the club as a club has gone through a lot of different stages, like any group held together by interest.
Now, I remember...
1 month it's 60 members at a meeting, and the next month it's 12 or 14, depending on what time of the year it is.
Now, you said something interesting,
yeah.
And this is mainly because I'm uneducated when it comes to... You said it was ORCA?
Yeah.
Okay. You said that you help or encourage kids to read the comic books. How do you guys do that? I mean, that sounds really interesting. That's like free comic book
Because that's
day.
like something you could do with
Yeah,
school.
I mean, that's something that I'd be interested in
and
as
actually,
a parent.
my friend Adam from the band, for a while, that's what he did. He actually stopped teaching, and he basically worked on, in like the preschools and the boys and girls clubs and stuff like that, projects, for the Department of Education, where he would encourage the kids to make a comic book. They'd create their own character. He would draw it out. He would, put it, make the actual comic. And then at the end of the thing, he would give every one of them a copy of the comic that they had created.
That would be awesome. I wish schools did that. That would be something very. But I don't mean to interrupt. But I mean that would be awesome. So, but no, fill us in because that's something that I definitely want to know more about.
At this point in time, back in the late 80s and early 90s, there really wasn't. Comics was in a transitional period where there really wasn't a lot of comic books out for kids.
Okay.
It had dropped off. Marvel wasn't doing much. DC wasn't doing much. And then on the lower levels, you had Archie.
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm talking about attracting kids at the age of 6, 7.
And you're
8,
looking at a time
9.
when the prices in comics were going up.
That's true.
So the readership level was actually going down as a result.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we stepped in, and as you can see from this old newsletter, we covered some areas at the time that were pertinent issues.
Yeah.
Some that now are moot, that have no basis of anybody really caring because we've gotten past that.
Now I remember back from it was like I think the mid '90s. It was like '93 or '94 that I remember seeing an ad for, and it was probably your comic club, the West Utica one.
Yeah.
It was at a library, and I used to see that at Ravenswood down on Genesee Street by the when they were next to the Stanley Theater. But I was engaged. I was working 2 jobs, so it was basically a situation at that point where I couldn't join because I didn't have the time to dealing with everything else, the family, the jobs, But I remember seeing stuff like that at that time. How big was your membership?
Well, we grew out of West Utica. When we moved out of West Utica and out of Oneida County and across New York State and then out of New York State. At the point we left Oneida County, we had 67 members in the club on the roster. Now, okay, that's not that big a deal. Okay,
67 is still pretty decent.
Yeah, that's a good size group.
Picture 67 people in a room.
Well, we didn't always.
To be held.
Everybody didn't always show up at the monthly meetings. We held monthly meetings at the library and so forth. And we were at a couple churches. We'd move the meetings around, trying to make them more closer for people that might want to come. And then, of course, when you move into like New Hartford or one of the other area communities to hold a comic book, to publicize and hold a comic book meeting, people might from New Hartford might come to Whitesboro, but nobody from Rome might come there. So we moved around a little bit to make it as easy for people to find us as possible. But then we also, on the same level, when we were looking for local members, we were building the roster up from outside the area. And at the point of when things started dropping off for us, for a lot of different reasons, we hit a little over 1,800 members. And that was across the United States.
I was about to say, because that's not all local. That's
no,
wow,
that's huge.
But when you look at across the United States, that's not huge.
It's still not a big number, but again, 1,800 people in one room is huge.
Where I didn't do this all myself. I had the support of the comic book industry from the publishers. I had gotten in touch and had the support of libraries. I had gotten in touch and had support of schools, school teachers, in using comic books as incentives for reading.
That's awesome.
And we also did some things down in Florida, in Miramar, Florida, with CrossGen. If you remember CrossGen.
I remember CrossGen. Yeah.
I remember one of their characters was an archer. Some woman with red hair, looked like she was wearing Robin Hood tights and a bow and arrow.
Red hair, blonde hair.
Blonde hair, okay.
Yeah, she was a blonde.
Okay. I showed you how much at the time I was
Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah. At the time I was a big 2 guy, so that was it. I was reading them for the stories, and couldn't even care who was writing them or drawing them.
No, so. I sat down and thinking about all this, and this all just grew out of a garage sale on a weekend in West Utica, where I had these group of kids, that totaled 9, during the course of that weekend, come up the driveway, and I had comics. I always had comics, extra comics. I'd put them out, and I'd sell them, 3 for $1, 5 for $1, whatever. And these kids would come up, and they started talking. And that's where the whole idea of the West Utica Comic Book Club came from. Okay. And then Orca just took over from that after I started talking with people from Marvel and DC and sharing my ideas with them. And then from there, we changed the club from the West Utica Comic Book Club to being something more.
Something bigger because you had more people in it than just West Utica.
And that's where we came up with Orca.
Okay.
So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Was that your idea, Orca, or?
Well, I had gotten invited down to Marvel to the holiday party.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You were telling me this story at lunch. Yeah. Oh,
Right.
you'll love this story, Dante.
Yeah,
Awesome.
well, I got invited down by, if you're not into Marvel, you may not remember, there was a guy that used to do promotion-wise for Marvel. His name's Jim Brennan. He was Spider Jim. And Marvel had this thing where they had a number you would call, and it would tell you what was releasing that week at the comic book store, and run right down and buy our latest Spider-Man and X-Men and whatever.
And I think if I remember correctly, I never actually called the number because I think it was like a 900 number, so it cost you to call that. Or I remember seeing stuff.
Yeah, there was a slight charge for the call.
Yeah, so that's why I never did it.
Yeah, well, depending on your age at the time. You know.
Well, this would have been mid-90s. I would have been in my 20s. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was young.
Yeah, well,
Young.
so in talking with Jim, he let on that the holiday party was coming up, and he said that he asked me if I wanted to come on down for it, and I said, yeah, well, why not? And then he says Stan's going to be there. Stan Lee's going to be there.
So you partied with Stan Lee?
I got to spend that evening probably about 15, 20 minutes talking to Stan.
That's epicness in a cup. I can't even get in a line to meet Stan Lee, more or less, be in the same room at a party.
It just cost you $200, but we'll get to that.
I can't even get in a line to see Stan Lee.
It's a little easy. It's really intimidating to go into the men's room for obvious reasons and have to stand between Fabian and I'm not sure if I remember how to pronounce Fabian's last name.
Fabian's like a big. Omar is a huge fan, and I think Omar. Correct me on the website if I get this wrong. It's Nicienza.
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 Yeah.
Maybe. Okay.
Him and the guy at the time who was writing X-Men, I believe, Scott. Yeah, this is what happens when you get old. I can't remember Scott's last name. But at the time, two writers, I believe, talking back and forth, and here I am between them.
Well, that's a goodness sandwich.
After having a few cocktails.
Can you imagine what conversations the bathroom at Marvel Comics has heard over the years?
Did you finish the Prince for Spider-Man?
This wasn't at the office. This was.
But I'm just saying, imagine what the conversations that bathroom must have heard.
Well, most of us get to imagine.
What he wants me to do now?
Rick was there. I'm saying that's phenomenal. I mean,
well, Jim was nice enough that weekend to let me bring a couple more people down with me, and they were club officers, older club officers. They weren't the kids. Orca had, at that time, I think our youngest member was like 6 years old.
Oh, wow.
I was probably our oldest member at that point in time, and I took the guy that had become like an advisor to me, who I would bounce ideas off of, and another gentleman who was our second president of Orca, or of the West Utica Comic Book Club, and the three of us went down, and in talking about it on the way back, we just came up with the acronym.
Cool.
Did a little bit of a drawing on a napkin and came up with the acronym, and then from there, we pushed it along. And like I said, Marvel was very generous and supportive of us. DC, Valiant, Acclaim, Harris at the time doing Vampirella.
Yeah,
I wasn't big on Vampirella.
Tim
was a huge Vampirella fan, I think.
Yeah, well, that was the era, and then of course there were. And I shouldn't forget Archie. Archie Publications was also supportive, and it was a club. It was a club. It was meant to be fun. So, and then the other thing we did here locally was we'd gather up and we'd go to local conventions.
Awesome.
We took a couple tours of Marvel over the years. Yeah. Got to go to different stores, like all the stores down in the city at one time. Yeah, I've had to take 5, 6 different kids in at a time to keep an eye on them, obviously, and because we had other adults with us, chaperones or.
But that's still amazing that you guys do that.
Well, we did it. We're not doing it now on that level that we did, because for the most part, a lot of kids now you can't get them
You can't get them near a comic.
Can't get them to comic book.
You know,
Yeah, I mean, the only way you could do that these days is with your Nook, your Kindle, or your Android, or your iPod.
Exactly, and they're doing it.
That's the thing. I've got a Kindle Fire, and I've got a couple of comics, that were free comics downloaded to that because I don't really want if I'm going to pay money for a comic, I want it to be a physical comic in my hand.
Side note: I will trade Jeff my Android for his Kindle Fire at any day, second, or time, so I, who reads them on there, can.
Never gonna happen.
Rats.
I love my Kindle Fire, dude. You know that. In fact, I got the first episode of the Logan's Run TV show downloaded to my Kindle.
Nice.
Just picked it up yesterday.
Nice.
It was like $1.99 for that.
So here was the deal. If Orca was doing today what it was doing back then, I'd probably have to offer families a Kindle or some other form so that their child could tap in and be able to read some of these things.
That's
expensive. Well, like I say, one of the things you did on your Facebook page was because once you and I started talking, you gave me this like the first time we met. It's a copy of the Overstreet Hall of Fame, and it's basically a who's who of a lot of the writers and artists of the day. In fact, let Dante take a look at that.
I was peeking at this during one of our.
I got a copy of it. I can get to you if you want.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I bought a bunch of them, and through the Orca online group.
Because you have a Facebook group.
Yeah, we're going to be doing some of this stuff. This kind of stuff.
Yep. So anybody who's on Facebook wants to take a look at this stuff, just look up Orca, ORCA, Organized Readers of Comics
Association.
See, I always want to think it's associated.
Well, let me just clear that. There's another group on there that, in my opinion, is a bootleg group because they're
bootleg group.
Well, I don't know if they're members that were formerly in Orca and remember how good it was, and they're trying to recapture that, or what that's about.
They should just rejoin Orca.
The two groups.
No.
Oh, okay.
No. Again, I don't mind them. I mean, they're using Orca, so I mean, it keeps the name out there and keeps everything going. And we're still plugging along. We still put out a newsletter. It's nothing like the booklets there, but I still publish a newsletter for the club members that have hung on over the years. And a lot of these guys are in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, they've got families and responsibilities. And
oh yeah.
It's the same thing. Like I said, when I saw the ad way back when at Ravenswood for the West Utica Comic Con, I'm like, hey, that'd be a great idea to go to once in a blue moon, but I don't have the time to go to it or devote to a club.
Well, and that's me. I don't have the time to go and hang out at Ravenswood like I might have done
back in the day.
Yeah. So, I mean, I get a lot of my stuff through the mail, in regards to that. And I know that's probably not the nicest thing to say because, obviously, if we want comic book stores to stay around and to grow and foster in different communities, they got to be supported.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So,
because I'm all about, one of the things I've said for years, and, if you go back and listen to some of the podcasts, I've said it before, when we had DCBS as our sponsor for a long time, and In Stock Trades, which is one of their sister companies. DCBS, Discount Comic Book Service, they give percentage off and they mail it to you the day it comes out, and yada yada yada. And it's a great company. It shouldn't be any reflection on About Heroes or anybody else that wants to go use one of those services that I don't use it. I believe in giving your local business your money.
How many comic book clubs back then do you think there actually were?
Couldn't even tell you.
Other than us, I think there was maybe one or possibly two.
Wow.
That's a shame.
But now there's a lot more, and that's what I'm thankful for. I'm thankful for the fact that whoever those people are, they gather together, they talk about the hobby, they talk about the people that made and created comic books.
Yeah.
A lot of what's the people that are in this book, and it gives them a chance to know more about how comics got to be as great as they are.
So you're basically a trailblazer then? You basically paved the way for other great foundations.
Well, I think so.
You set the path on which they all walk.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Free Comic Book Day earlier. Let me tell you something. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, I was mailing letters to all the publishers and copies of the newsletter out to all the publishers for the comic book club, telling them how we gave away comics through our club structure.
Nice.
I also went to them and I asked them for free swag, because they would send us, at that time the gold issues were out, and Marvel was doing their black and white books and their little ash cans.
DC was doing like the Whitman comics.
That's
We
awesome.
would get stuff like that sent to us, and I put it in because every month we had a giveaway raffle. If somebody from Iowa joined the club, said they liked Superman, I'd go in, I'd see if I had something there, I'd ask them to send me a list of what they needed, what books they needed in their collection.
Right.
Of course, today that doesn't matter. They can go out and buy the trade or the the graphic novel or whatnot.
What was the largest amount you ever got from one company?
Well, that would have to be Marvel, but we were on the comp list, and just like all the artists and writers and inkers and so forth get these books sent to them that say DC or Marvel publishes. We also got those sent to us.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
The black and white, the guys that were running the promotions for those companies, those corporations, would send us the black and white early releases.
Sweet.
Which we could promote and publicize through our membership across the country.
That's awesome.
Did